Welcome to another interesting episode of Tech Talk with a Foe. I'm excited to welcome a tech actor, Demola, an extraordinary young man doing wonders in the tech space. Demola is an entrepreneur himself, a product manager, and a startup funding consultant. In this episode, we explore the challenges tech startups are facing in Africa, particularly in Nigeria. We discussed why many startups are failing. Startups have raised billions of dollars with a high failure rate of over 60% between 2010 and 2022 alone. I asked Demola what has happened to the likes of Deal Day, Everything, OLX Nigeria, Easy Taxi, Prindivo, the list goes on and on and on. Demola in this episode offers his insights to this problem and how startups can navigate these challenges. Sit back and enjoy our interesting conversation. Thank you. Welcome to another interesting episode of Tech Talk with a Foe. We have a special guest today, someone that is extraordinary, one of my special tech actors. I've known Demola now for how many years? Going to 10 years or thereabout, right? But I like the consistency, in Demola. Demola is someone that is very determined, precise. He knows where he's going. He is one of those individuals I like to reference or use as a case study, particularly for the young ones, on why you have to be intentional about what you do. Demola, my tech actor, can you say hello to my audience? Say hello to them. Let them have a feel of who you are. Demola. Kester, hail Demola now. Come on, why are you making Demola feel like a dog?
Demola.
Thank you. Don't worry, I'll give you an appointment, when I get to the promised land.
To the promised land. So
right,
you're not to the promised land yet.
Hi everyone. It's so great to be here. My name is Demola. Super excited to be here. Thank you so much, Afo, for the honor. Afo is a tech emeritus, right? And when you get this kind of calls, you don't ask what are we going to do. You just say yes and figure it out later, right? So great to be here. Hoping I can share one or two insights, and hoping that we can all clean and learn, and ultimately, fulfill our dreams. Rooting for you guys, and let's get the party started.
Yes, Demola, the new status you just gave me, kind of very unique. Tech emeritus, right? So my conversation consistently now has been about tech actors, the tech zombies. These are those folks that I despise with passion, right? Don't waste your time, get the best out of technology and be up there. Now you've created another new category now, which I will have to add, to my dictionary. Tech emeritus. Interesting. So before I dive into Demola's profile, today, the reason why I'm bringing Demola today is because of his experience when it comes to startup funding. So our conversation today is going to be around startup generally, right? Again, Demola's journey is a testament of life transition, right? And he has actively been in the technology space. But before technology, Demola is one of those tech actors that early enough he realized that he really needs to do a switch, right? He comes from another background. Demola, what's that your background again?
So I studied human anatomy. I wanted to go and be a medical doctor, right? But life happens and things change. So now I now speak about innovation, technology, startups, funding, and things like that. I always say that, I wanted to wear white overalls, treating patients. Right now, I think I just wear different hats, to feel how we can help expand the African ecosystem.
So originally, going back to my conversation, Kester, right? Demola originally wanted to be a medical doctor. He's actually in the medical space. But for some reason, he later realized that talking about being a medical doctor and product management, there's some, kind of synergy. He discovered early enough that he's a product person, and Demola made that switch. You understand? So if you remember the conversation I had with the kids we visited started, we're really particular about how technology can take you to any field. Demola, as a product manager, can still move back to his medical field. And if you also look at some of the things Demola has done in his career, you can also see that for some reason, Demola will still find himself back to where he originally came from, which is the medical field, but now as a tech actor, making a change, making a difference in that field. So let's just look at what the conversation will be around today. If you look at what Demola has done from the edtech startup space, he has also moved into banking. I'm sure you guys are familiar with, Kester especially, you're familiar with how Alert disrupted, when it comes to mobile banking application. Yes. The number one sought after app, particularly for millennials at a point, was Alert, right? Yes. Okay, so that gives you a sense of where Demola is coming from. Demola is also part of the team responsible for what you see in Alert today. Demola, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, they say it takes a village, right? So not just me. I think a number of other people as well. Alert has been on for about 6 years. It's Nigeria's first digital bank, and Royal Bank was pioneered that. I joined Royal Bank about almost 2 years ago. But beauty about product management and technology is that it's never static, right? It's always evolving. And what we see yesterday is not what we hope to see tomorrow, right? So it's an honor to work in the innovation team of Royal Bank, and keep figuring out how we can provide what I call products or features that are usable, feasible, and viable for customers, and ultimately help them solve their most pressing pain points. But we have an army. Nothing good really happens by one person, right? I think an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with someone. You can download that. I know I'll pay for ads, but
okay. Anyways, I'm not even going to ask you to download. To pay for ad for Alert, right? Again, because you are coming online with us, sharing wealth of knowledge with our audience. So quite a number of my audience, and particularly the target audience we are engaging, right? If you talk to everybody today, being a startup is a conversation that, I doubt if there's any youth in Nigeria today that is not having one idea of a startup, right? If you don't have an idea of a startup, you're probably running one yourself, okay? But most time when we get into this startup space, there's some information that we are not even familiar with. There's so many things that we are kind of shielded from, and that's the conversation we want to have today. So I want Demola to help us walk us through some of those things, right? We know in the last, how many years now? I think about the last 10 to 15 years, in excess of $2 billion, right, has been invested in different startups from 2015 to 2022. Demola, it is shocking to know, I want you to correct my fact, that about 61% of this $21 billion, is actually gone down the drain. 61% of it. These are some of the figures that are flying around. Okay, about 32% of this, particular 41%, 61% that we have been talking about, right? They are completely out of business as we speak. You understand what I'm saying? And I think there are some names that we are quite familiar with, right? Which I'm sure you also can, because I really want to understand. So if we're saying running a tech company is the direction to go for Africa, and some of the pioneers of some of this technology are either out of business today or got acquired at a ridiculous amount. So for example, the original drivers of Conga are not the drivers of Conga anymore, right? We know Sim Shagaya started Conga and Deal Day. Okay, so where is Conga today? Where's Deal Day? I know a company called Everything. I know OLX, I know Easy Taxi, I know Printivo. Okay. These are quite a number of lists of companies that raise money. Okay, but firstly, can you confirm that figure for starters? 61% of that $2 billion in the last 10, 15 years has gone down the drain.
Okay, well, let me just put some context, right? Thank you for the question. I'll say that I think it's way more than that has entered the ecosystem. I think it was 2023 alone, we had $5 billion, which was it's quite a slight drop from what it was in 2020. But starting with what you said, sir, I think going down the drain, maybe because I'm an innovator, right? I believe that failure is the precursor to success. So I won't say you went down the drain. Because I feel like when they say the reason why some people are standing out is because some people they're standing on the shoulder of giants, right? I feel like some of this money, quote and unquote, help build the ecosystem that we have today. For context, Paystack was the first ever Nigerian company to get into Y Combinator. Y Combinator is arguably the biggest startup accelerator in the world, based in the US, San Francisco. And I mean, they have accelerated folks like Stripe, Airbnb, and all whatnot. Coinbase. And when Paystack got into Y Combinator, I think 2015, I think a few months after, Flutter we got, and from now to then, I think we've had upwards of 20 plus or 30 plus startups from Nigeria that got into Y Combinator. So the point I'm trying to make is, before now, I mean, this is about 7 years ago, the African market was not validated. Nobody wanted to touch it, right? VCs were comfortable doing their business in the US, getting very good valuations, and everybody was happy. But Paystack helped create that pathway, and break that jinx. And from now till then, I mean, we've had significant progress in the startup ecosystem. So I'll say that, I mean, I won't want to term it or let us look at it as going down the drain. I'll say there were investments, because trust me, it's a very, very nascent market. So a lot of people still believe that the African ecosystem is still very, very in the very early days, right? So they can say it's what maybe China or India market is maybe 10, 15 years ago, So I'll say that when you're in a new market, it's an emerging market, there are a lot of frictions in the ecosystem. There's still a lot of things to be done. I would liken it to a child, right? You don't expect a child to start jumping from the day it was born, right? It's going to take a lot of ups and downs here and there for the child to start working, So I think just to put that context. Of course, maybe delving more into the reasons why these things could have happened. Starting with Konga, Konga run by a startup maestro himself, Shim Shagaya, who's currently running USA, yes, and a tech startup, doing tremendous things. I think he even started university as well, I think Miva University, and I mean, it was acquired by Xenox. Xenox is a hardware manufacturer in Nigeria, computers, I think importer as well. I think they were running a company called Udala at the time, and eventually partnered with Konga and eventually acquired it, right? So in a sense, acquired
from the acquisition, then the acquisition from, I mean, some even said the acquisition was actually next to nothing. It was undisclosed. They said it probably, just acquired just to save the very bad situation that Konga was at that particular time.
Okay, well, I mean, the truth about it is it was acquired and it was undisclosed, right? So I guess we'll never know how much exactly it was acquired for, and I understand the sentiments of those that are claiming that. But let's not forget that when you start a business as a founder, you want looking to exit, right? And there are limited ways in which you can exit. You can either IPO. I don't think our market was ready for it at the time. You can get acquired. Can get acquired as some tech brothers say, right? So, for example, Facebook acquired Instagram. It was an acquisition, but it's an acquire. An acquire is a scenario where the founders of the original company still work for a considerable amount of time with that company, so they can propel their vision. I think Microsoft also acquired LinkedIn as well. I think it was sort of an acquire too, right? So, the point I'm trying to make is, whether we like it or not, it was some sort of success because it started the business, started from zero. Made some losses because of the fact that it was a very, very new industry. But eventually, they got value from it. I feel if it was totally worthless, whoever acquired it would not have acquired it, right? I feel like the folks that acquired it saw some level of value in it, and they also trusted the founders that did that, right? So talking about founders, right? Like I said, Shim Shagai has gone on to do amazing things in the edtech space. I'm sure he has learned lessons, and the logistics industry is not where it's supposed to be. It's not perfect. We have guys like Chowdeck, for example, right? Who are delivering upwards of 1,000 meals a day or more than that. I feel that guys like that are riding off the back of the success of the antecedent that was laid down by people like Konga, Jumia at the time. I think it used to be OLX, like you mentioned. I think the Gen Zs on this call might not be able to relate. Apologies for that. Yes. You're right.
Oh, okay. So outside the fintech, right? Because some of their contemporaries that comes from that 2010, 2015 generation, right? Can we still categorically say that these companies are truly a success story? Can we say Jumia for a fact is a success story, right? From an investor standpoint?
Well, I think it's not a very straightforward answer. I'll say yes. And why I'll say yes is because of the fact that a number of times, they might not be the ones, the founder of the company might not be the ones to reap, quote unquote, the success, right? And like I mentioned about FaceTime the other time. Obviously, the business has not done really well. But let's not forget that Jumia is the first Nigerian business, to IPO in the US, or first African business, right? In some way, shape, or form, right? And when that announcement was made in Wall Street, it was a big deal. It's still a big deal, being that I don't think any other startup has IPO since then. So I feel like up until the point where the investment bankers and all the stakeholders came together and say, hey, let's go public with this company. Everybody felt that the company had very good unit economics and they're going to do quite well. And I'm sure that on the day where they IPO'd, that was a liquidity event. So it meant that people who invested in them at very early point, even angel investors, could get some return on their investment, right? That was one milestone. Of course, they have IPO'd. Stocks have not performed as well as most people expected them to perform, but that's the market, So, for example, a lot of other companies are not doing so well on the stock exchange as well, right? So there's so many factors that make a company not live up to expectations, right? This doesn't mean that they are not doing well, but they're not doing what they could do or they should do. But there's so many factors. And so you're an entrepreneur, I think a 3 or 4 time entrepreneur, right? You come to realize that the reason why startups are exciting is because I think 8 out of every 10 startups fail, and not because the founders are not competent. It's just what it is, And
what I'm really trying to establish, and I really want us to get to that, right? Is right. To start with, looking at the generation of the startups that we used as an examples and the ones that are currently still operational. Okay. Now, first is to come to that conclusion, which you said is a mixed position, right? That are startups in Africa, in Nigeria, are they meeting expectation, right?
Okay.
If the answer, and your answer is actually a mixed one, a mixed response. You said some are, some are not. There are some factors responsible for it. There are some things that we actually can celebrate in terms of what they've achieved. Okay. Now, so my question would be, for those that are not meeting expectation, for the examples that we gave, right? Because to an extent we've narrowed down to fintech seems to be the most viable. Are those ones that we can identify with as success stories today, right? And that's why, if you're running anything and if you're not in any shape or form fintech, nobody wants to touch you, right? So the question is, why are they not meeting expectation if they are not?
Okay. Thank you for that more for additional context, right? So I think that you're right. In as much as I'm trying to look at the brighter side and being optimistic, the hard reality is that they're not meeting expectations. I think let's move on from that. So it's a case of, it's like we jokingly say, right? When we purchase things online, what I ordered and what I got. So what the investors ordered and what the investors got were quite different. So let me just highlight a few things before I share my thoughts on why I think they're not meeting expectations, right? So I think in 2023, data shows that 40% of Nigerian startups fail within 3 years. And I'm quoting a very reputable tech journalist platform, Rita Bridges. And another data says that 50% of founders cite market challenges as the primary reasons why their startups fail, and that's by Partech. Partech is a VC firm. And on this premise, I think there are a number of reasons why you might want to say these startups have not performed. Number one is, there are some market miscalculations, right? So for example, maybe you you typically overestimate what the market size is, or you overestimate what the customer base is, or what the total addressable market is, Another reason I'm linking to that is what I call share of the wallet. Interestingly, I read a report or a story around, I think it was sometime in the early 2000s, when recharge cards just came into Nigeria. Interestingly, Coca-Cola saw a dip in the purchases of their products. And upon, zooming in on that, they realized that because of something called the share of the wallet, right? Most people had disposable income, and they had to pick between making phone calls to their family and friends or buying Coca-Cola. In the very early days, right, charge cards were not as cheap as how they are right now. Buying phone SIM cards were not as cheap. I don't know if you bear me witness. I think some people bought SIM cards for as high as 40,000 naira, right?
Actually, I think the first price tag on it was about 150 something thousand.
Exactly, and I don't think people buy SIMs for up to 4,000
and the value
naira.
and the value of that 150,000 back in 1999 or 2000 when SIM cards were rolled out. In today's money, if you do your calculation, you can imagine what that is now.
Yes, exactly. My dollar was, I think, in the hundreds, so that's about $100,000 for the SIM card. While we're spending less than zero. Yes, so the point I'm trying to make is they realized that the share of the wallet was there. So people rather say, hey, I want to make phone calls to my friends and family. This is a new technology, and something has to give, right? Coca-Cola became a want, not a need. So one is, market miscalculation. So maybe you assume that for some reason the market we are going to operate in, you decide on the market. We mentioned Jumia already. So for example, Jumia focused on online retail. But they neglected the fact that there was low internet penetration in Nigeria and there were some logistic challenges. I like to say when Amazon launched in the US, Amazon had UPS, right? That's already available there for deliveries. Right?
It's not even just GPS. They are quite a number of logistics companies that
established logistic companies. But I think Jumia they underestimated the fact that there were so many logistic challenges. So another case study I made, of company that I think made some market.
Before you get to your case study, right? I want us to look at the challenges startups are facing in Nigeria, especially, particularly this difficult economic situation we're facing, right? We started by looking at different companies, that have been celebrated startups when they started. And they raised good money, right? The likes of Deal Day, Everything, OLX, Easy Taxi, and the list goes on and on and on. I remember at some point, even celebrated and Andela had to scale down significantly. Demola is not what it's expected to be as of today. What it was projected to be originally is not what we have of today, right? We also can't say the same thing of Printivo. Now, predominantly the success story we have for Africa is predominantly the fintech. Okay, so one of the things I would love to get to the heart of, and that's why I also like Kester to speak to some of these things I'm seeing. Kester also just started a digital marketing business, right? And I'm sure Kester obviously would have some questions for you, and I just would like Kester, before you say anything, to also quickly walk us through Demola's background and why I believe, is someone that can speak to this conversation. So, for example, for over half a decade, Demola has blended his experiences that spans from studying human anatomy, which was what he started his career with in the medical school, in starting out his career as a teaching assistant. After about 3 years, he has transitioned into banking and finance. But Demola has picked interest in funding of startups. You understand what I'm saying? Funding of startups and the entire value chain when it comes to raising capital and also exiting. And that meant that he obviously would have seen some of those things responsible for this failure that the industry experienced. right? So it's a question of, is it just about the economy? Is it a problem of some of these founders? Okay, so Kester, what are those questions you would like to ask Demola directly as a startup yourself?
All right, thank you, Afo. Yes, so as he mentioned, being in fact, sometimes it's even hard to try to call myself one, because, having to go through the entire process, the struggle, right? Especially in these harsh times, right? In the country today, Nigeria, there are a lot of roadblocks. Already there have been lots of roadblocks, and now it's even much worse. So I would take myself as like a mouthpiece for several other people like myself out there, right? We have many, like Afu mentioned earlier in this session. He said there are lots of young youth. You'd hardly find a semi-determined youth today that wouldn't call themselves a CEO of something, right? So to go straight to my question, right? First of all, I want to have this touch what we are currently experiencing right now in the country as it is, right? That relates to the dollar, naira, currency and all. And for any tech startup, right, especially those ones that, the ones that are looking to expand and really go beyond the country, meaning you would likely deal with international transactions and all. How do you feel the impact of this USD, the rise of this our exchange rate would be or is right now in Nigeria as it is, right? And tech startups, to be precise.
Okay. Let me just quickly put an addendum to what Kester have asked, right? Using some of the examples, okay? So for example, you have startup that raised money in 2015 when dollar was probably trading at 250 to a naira, okay? And as when they got their investment for the purpose of this conversation, raised $5 million, right? And their projection was to do a 10x in 3-5 years. So $5 million that was raised then, and looking at the rate of inflation now, you understand? Can you look at it from that perspective to respond to Kester's question?
Okay. Thank you. I'll say that the background cutting I'll lay on this is number one, business is risk, right? And investors know that, there's no guarantee on return on investment. The venture capital asset class is one of the riskiest asset classes, right? They are, more stable, almost quote unquote, 100% guarantee or 99% guarantee of return on investment in certain asset classes. But the challenge in these asset classes is that the rate of returns are not very high. So to answer your question, I'll say that one of the risks that most investors take cognizance of is foreign exchange risk, right? So startups are receiving money in USD. Most of the startups are based in Africa, based in Nigeria, right? Their customers are going to pay in naira or in said cities or shillings, depending on where in Africa they are. And most of the time, like we mentioned, is inflation. In 2016, dollar was way lower than what it is right now. So I'll say that most of these investors, how they're able to hedge their risk, there are a number of ways. I want to delve into that. But for startups, I'll say it's quite unfortunate, first off, because even if you increase your revenues by multiple folds, you realize that you have 1 million more customers and you have made 100 million naira more. But guess what? By the time you convert the 100 million naira you have made, and once you're reporting to your investors on your updates, you are sharing maybe monthly or quarterly updates with them, and you're saying that what's going on? You are making less dollars, right, than you're supposed to make, as opposed to making, but you're making more naira and less dollars. I think it's quite unfortunate. One thing that I'll say a lot of startups are beginning to do is that they're going to see how they can get some level of foreign exchange income, quote unquote, and they kind of hedge that risk of FX. Some of them are also beginning to charge for their services in USD as well, so at least they can make FX are a more stable income and all of that. I would say that, just to add, it's actually quite complex, to be honest, because most of these investors get their money from limited partners. And there are no stories. After a 7 to 10 year period, you have to return the whole size of the fund. But I'll say that another thing investors also do to kind of edge against this is there's something called the power law in venture capital. Basically means that VCs expect that maybe 1 or 2 startups in every 10 or every 20 will return the whole fund. I don't want to bore us with details, but it basically means that, let's say VC has $20 million to deploy, capital to deploy, right? And they're going to invest in 50 startups. They believe that, okay, maybe 3, 4, 5 of the startups would make enough return on investment, whether through acquisition, whether through going to IPO and all of that, such that it covers up for the 45 startups that might not do as much. Case in point, Airbnb, for example, Uber, for example, Lyft, all of that ups, Coinbase, right? Stripe. But bringing
Demola, I need us to stay. I need us to stay on Nigeria, and I'll tell you why very quickly, because I want to ask a question, right? And I honestly need you to be honest about it, right? Venture capitalists, angel investors, people that have made investments into Nigeria in the last how many years?
Yes.
Do you have any of them happy with their investments thus far?
Yes, I think some are happy. For example, Paystack was acquired 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Acquisition. My point is, acquisition is not necessarily a way to measure return on investment, right?
Well, it's a marker, like I said there. So let me give you a scenario, sir. So Paystack had some Indian investors invested in them. I don't know. I don't have all the numbers because I don't work for Paystack. But let's assume that.
Oh, okay, I got your point.
Someone invested $100,000 in Paystack when the valuation was lower.
True.
And 5 years after, Paystack was acquired for $200 million. Even after dilution, right? Maybe the person acquired just 1% of Paystack, for example. And that 1% after dilution is 0.5%. At the point where Paystack was acquired for $200 million, right? 10% of 200 million is 20 million. I think 1% is 2 million. 0.5%. So the point I'm trying to make is the return on investment is way higher because we're going to calculate 3 or 4 or 5x, right, in just 5 years. And the question now begs that if the person put in $100,000 in any other asset class, would they have $1 million? The answer is no, right?
So you know in the last how many 5 to 10 years now,
yes,
right? This equity investment company, they've had reasons to change names over the years, right?
Yes.
You'll see some promoters of a particular company at a particular time, right? Yeah. That company out of business. Now you have the promoters in another name, in different shape or form. So the impression I'll get from that is, are these people really returning some of those investments? Maybe a Paystack is probably, one of those good investments. I just want us to look at it on the basis of average. How many happy venture capitalists are out there looking at the reality of a Nigerian market?
Okay, well, to be honest, to give a very straight answer, I don't think there are too many happy investors. However, like I say, right, if you're in VC or venture capital, right, you are playing a long-term game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, So I think that most of them also have that mindset in mind. If they want to make certain quick bucks, for example, asset classes that can invest in money, right, and they get very quick return on their investment. So I think that from the very beginning, there's a lot of awareness of the fact that this is very risky. This has very, very, very low chance and low odds for outstanding success. So I think because of that, they make arrangements for all of those unforeseen circumstances at the point of deploying capital. That's why they more or less diversify. I know VCs that they have different models for diversifying. Some VCs diversify in their agnostic of sector. They put some money in fintech, put some money in edtech, put some money in agtech and all of that. Some VCs are truly agnostic. or some VCs are even geography agnostic. They put some money in Africa, put some money in Middle East, put some money in Latin America, put some money in Southeast Asia, right? The assumption is that, even if there's an economic downturn, the odds of having downturn across all of these places are very, very limited, So I think the point is, maybe I'm sounding a bit biased because I'm in the space as well. But not to sound biased, I'll say that it's a long-term game, and I'll say that ultimately, of course, nobody is happy when they lose money, but I'll say that as long as the due diligence is well carried out and they have looked at their parameters VCs to make investment decisions. For example, they also invest in anybody, Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? They have very well thought out, and they actually face an investment committee, right, and defend this investment, So I don't want to delve into the units and the metrics you use to actually assess investments, but I'll say at the point where an investor is making an investment, right? They look at the founder, right? That's very, very, very important. The founder, the market, the competitive advantages. And the key question VCs ask is, and maybe a lot of startup founders might learn from this, why are you the best to solve this problem? So if, for example, you say I want to solve a problem in health tech in Africa, do you have any sort of medical experience? Because if you don't, why should I trust you enough to solve the problem, right? Are you a first-time founder? Are you a second-time founder? If you're a second-time founder, for example, let's assume that Paystack founder today exits and says, hey, Paystack, I've sold it, I don't want part of it anymore. He has credibility already. And if he goes to something else in another sector, right, or something similar to another fintech, most investors might be willing to back it because he has some track record, So, and which means that it's less risky to invest in him, Inyabo is a classic example. Founded Andela, did quite well with it. Founded Flutterwave as well, did quite well with it, right? Founded 2 unicorns. I always say that there are about 6 unicorns in Nigeria's history. One human being has founded 2, right? That's into. But the point I'm just trying to make in essence is that obviously he's an outlier, right? And just to breeze quickly on why some of these investments might go bad. I kept mentioning that you can't control, there are factors you can't control. But just to quickly breeze through why. Number one, like I mentioned earlier, market miscalculations. Number 2, operational challenges. I think Kester mentioned FX and mentioned the fact that things are quote unquote hard, right? And what that means is that purchasing power is lower. So right now, if your product, I always tell this to founders, there are 2 categories of products: vitamins and painkillers. Typically in Africa, we don't have luxury of vitamins. I'll ask on this call here, I'll do a small experiment, right? If I ask the 2 amiable gentlemen on this call, when last took a vitamin, they might say maybe a month ago or 2 months ago. But if I ask that, when last did you take a painkiller when you had a very, very nerve-wracking headache? The answer is immediately, right?
Yeah.
It's immediately because it's stopping the pain. When you get home by 11 p.m., you've been in track for 4 hours, and you just take water and take a painkiller. You got next morning and feel better, right? But your vitamins, you might just see, okay, maybe I should take it. It's a nice to have. It's a want. But painkillers are very, very important. And in Africa, unfortunately, because of disposable income, because of the climate, most people don't have the luxury of buying what they want. They buy what they need. So what are their needs? Food, clothing, shelter. Most of the time. Data right now is becoming a need, becoming like oxygen, right? So if you're not selling what they need, most of the time, it's a problem, especially in the African market. We don't have the luxury of solutions for problems, right? It's a case of, is he in need? Do I need? And trust me, people are always going to go for what they need, right? So circling back to your question, I don't think investors are happy or excited. But I think investors also know that it's very, very early stages, in the African ecosystem. So look at it like this. If it's going to be 1 year, today is maybe day 5. I guess
So looking at you think you did more than justice to that question. So looking at the current economic situation we are currently facing, okay. So if you would advise me as a startup, one, is it a right time for me to seek funding? Now, if I really need to seek funding, what would you advise? Should I focus on funding locally, or is there still room to seek a dollar-denominated fund
Okay,
I mean,
well, I'll say
I've checked all your boxes. Okay,
yes,
the service
yes,
I'm offering is not a vitamin; it's a painkiller.
yes.
Right? It is a need, right? But to get it up and running, as a matter of fact, I have traction, like in terms of records to show for my performance. Looking at the current economic situation and some of those unforeseen circumstances that can happen for whatever reason, what type of what type of funding should I be looking at?
Okay, well, so before I just delve into that question, give more context. I'll say that I'll just say it how it is, right? Tough news, but it's what it is. Right now, it's very difficult. It's something we call it in the space called the VC winter, right? It's winter season right now. Because of a number of factors. Generally in Africa, there's been a history of limited access to capital. What typically happens is that, when there is economic downturn, like it is globally, people always switch to what they know, right? People switch to what they're comfortable with. So before, for top VCs in the world, Tiger Global, Secure Capital, all of these guys, right? Investing $100 million in a number of startups is a rounding error. Rounding error meaning that they have a maybe $25 million fund, right? But right now it's a case of let's go back to what we know. Let's go back to the basics, right? We are not experimenting. We are not gallivanting, right? We are just sticking to what we know, staying in the markets we know. So there's limited access to funding. Number two is, of course, attached to that is investor caution. People are generally more cautious, right? And more risk averse. It's also very hard to demonstrate traction, right? Because like we mentioned, it's like a chicken and egg kind of thing, right? Because most people don't have money, they are not ready to spend on their wants. And if your product is not the painkiller and the vitamin, even if you're making money last year, right now people are more cautious, right? And inflation is really eating deep into their pocket. The first thing they are going to stop is subscriptions. They're not interested in watching movies anymore and paying X amount every month for something. I don't want to mention any streaming platform. But the point I'm trying to make is, right, they're going to stop their wants and entertainment. I think a friend was telling me about cinemas, right, and how there's been some, very, very low patronage of their services, right? Because people are asking myself that why would I go to cinema and spend X amount of money? It's a good experience, no doubt, but there's so many things they could do. They could buy fuel to their generators, they could buy fuel to their cars, they could buy food, they could do a lot of things, right? As well spending a certain amount on cinemas, on the cinema experience. So the experience is to be an amazing experience for families. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, let me just come in here briefly, Demola.
Okay.
You said something that you said something that made me just sort of I mentioned earlier that I want to serve as a kind of a mouthpiece, right, to young people, right, the startups that are out there, just like myself. Now, Afo asked the question, and in your response, you also said that gaining traction is not something that is quite easy to come around, right? Because you need funds to a large extent to do such. Now, this is, and I will say this because I have been in rooms where we've had people like myself discussing this particular problem to a large extent. So I know that this is what people are likely going to want to hear an answer to. So my question is for the startup, right? Like most likely a tech startup in this scenario that has, of course, done a lot of things on its own, like from the bootstrapping standpoint, right? It has done a lot of things. For example, created its own application, has gotten a lot of data, even from real-time interactions and all that. Now, it's time to take things to the next level, though this particular platform has not really made any money per se. Rather, it has gotten a lot of data, which of course is value in itself in this day and age, and so on and so forth, right? So now it has gone to the stage, and mind you, as to use your metaphor, this solution is painkiller, not a vitamin, right? Because painkiller is relative to some extent, right? It's relative to your status, your need, and all of that, right? So
exactly.
So now we have this particular solution that is seeking for funding. taking from funding, through the venture capital or whatever angel investor, whatever means available. Now, the question is, how does this company give itself the right kind of valuation to say, because it knows its value in the long run, right? To say, oh, I want to value my company at 1 billion naira, right? I want to value my company at 1 billion naira, and I want to sell, or I want to put out 10%, you understand, for investment, which means that will go for like 100 million naira. So now, if you check the expenses, if you check, things that has happened in terms of what you have put into the business, if you sum it all up, it's probably less than 50 million, for example. So now, how does one, as a founder, how do they put or place that company in the position where it can afford to sell itself to investors as what it wishes to be? I don't know if that question makes sense.
I get it. And I think I like the fact that you mentioned that painkillers mean different things to different people, right? Like I would jokingly say, it depends on the bigger the headache, right? And it depends on who's feeling the pain. So if you sell water to someone in desert, in Sahara Desert, you can sell one sachet water for 5,000 naira. Why? Because the water is not valuable at that point, right? If you are selling a warming towel or something to somebody, an Eskimo, right? So the point I'm trying to make is, it depends on the number of factors. But to answer your question, I'll say number one, valuations are not what you wish to be. Right? It's not a wish.
Yes.
Right? There's some mathematics to it, right? So typically, pre-seed startup raise between $50,000 and $50,000, right? And typically, they are valued between $1 to $3 million. At seed stage, you value that between $5 and $50 million, and it typically raise between $500,000 and $2 million at seed stage, right? Most startups, this is how their journey flows. So, like I mentioned, you're bootstrapped. Let's assume you get an angel investor to invest in you. Let's say the investor gives you $20,000, right? $30,000. They are called angels for a reason. It means they are nice, relatively nicer than VC, right? And they have church mind, like we always say in Nigeria. So they invest in you at decent valuations. All they care about is just supporting the startup, right? At that point, typically most startups go through an incubator or an incubator's program to get some validation. The key word here is validation. Because think about it. For the VC to invest in you, they have taken a gamble, and they have to tick a number of boxes to ensure that you fit that mold for them, right? So, after the incubation program, maybe you get a pre-seed funding, or let's say you get some more traction. You get your first 10,000 users, get your first 1,000 users to prove market validation and prove acceptance of your product. Typically, when you get into an accelerator, like I mentioned my community the other time. I mentioned Techstars. I mentioned 500 startups. So those are valuable accelerators as well. What that gives you again is credibility, right? It shows that a top accelerator in the world believes in what I'm trying to do. That gives investor more confidence, right? It's a case of just like recruitment, right? You feel that, okay, the reason why some companies say, hey, 2-1 and above, it's not because folks that have 2-2 or third class are not smart enough. It's just that they feel like, you know what, let me put a filter in place such that for this person to have had first class, second class, upper, and disciplined, they are diligent. It's just an assumption, right? And I want only like that on my team. Unfortunately, I can't hire everybody, right? So I can't say, oh. So the point I'm trying to make is your valuation is not what you wish to be. The market already has a way of doing these valuations, right? Such that at the pre-seed level, you typically can't be valued at more than $5 million. I said you have found a cure to cancer, right? Or something astronomical like that. At seed level, like I said, $5 to $15 million, and whatnot. And most investors are also very wary at investing at very high valuations. Like, think about it. If you say, hey, I'm valued at $10 million at pre-seed level, and I give you $1 million, it means I just have 10% of your company, and I give you so much money. I have not proved so much to me, because most times you have not found product market fit. You just have an MVP, right? I'm rid of that. And guess what? For subsequent rounds, it becomes more complex for whoever is coming on board, because there's going to be a lot of dilutions. I don't want to go into technical details. But the point I'm trying to make is that's the way the market has kind of curated it. A lot of founders feel like I can just think that my startup is worth $1 billion or worth $100 million, Sorry, it's not about what you think. It's about what the market thinks. And I think founders have these issues. I mean, I've been a founder before. You get emotionally attached to some of these things. I love a problem and I love my solution so much. But guess what? What matters most is the market. If the market thinks your solution is not great enough, sorry about that. And that's why most founders, I think one thing they have to develop is they have to be less emotional about their solutions. What matters most is the customer care about solving their problem. They don't care about your solution. Can I solve this problem? Yes. Whoever is going to help me solve this problem cheaper, faster, I'm going to give my money to that person. Do you understand?
Yes.
Right? Not the person that has the most fancy app or the best UI UX. And all of that. Right?
Honestly, I actually so much love your response. It hits the point to me, right? Now, just to quickly, because again, I want to recap again, because I know we're going to have a lot of people watching this and seeking to gain knowledge from it, right? And already from what you have said, I can already imagine some people that this particular piece of content that you've already communicated here is going to be helpful to, right? Because now they have been pointed in the right direction, as opposed to wishful thinking to say, oh, this is what I feel my company should be worth, right? Now, this is a process. This is how the market has been structured. The incubation program and all of that, right? So thank you again. I think you did really good to that question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, before Afo jumps in, so sorry. I wanted to just quickly run through some recommendations, because I put a curtain around, hey, why I think startups are not meeting expectations. I think I wanted to give some very proactive and actionable recommendation on in as much as I mean, like I said, it's a VC winter, right? In as much as the economy is not good, people are still spending money. People are still having parties. So the question is, like I was telling a friend of mine, event planners are still having a lot of events. I mean, so sometimes it's like an anomaly, because you're asking yourself, oh, there's no money, and people are shutting down, and people are having events and all of that. I always jokingly tell a couple of friends of mine that for some reason in this part of the world, if you're able to try to figure out how to make people happy, you're fine, right? And because of the fact that people are looking for an escape, right? And they are looking for that thing they can do, or that place they can go, that events they can hang out, or those kind of things, right? So at least at that moment in time, I mean, I have a background in anatomy. At that moment in time, they have endorphins. Endorphins are feel-good hormones, right? Like secreted within them, and they feel very happy and comfortable. I mean, so don't let me deviate too much. So let me just briefly share those recommendations that I think that startups that are listening to this can adopt, on raising funding. I think number one is focus on the fundamentals, right? It's simple, right? Value is value. Focus on the fundamentals. I mean, revenue minus cost to expenses, profit. It's simple. What's my cost for acquiring one customer? How much am I going to make from that customer? That's it. It's simple. You can't it's not magic. I mean, Afo is, over how many decades now? 2 or 3 decades or 4 decades in business, right? Sorry for estimating how long you have spent, but the point I'm trying to make is you understand that so Afo is what we call like a startup dinosaur, and you agree with me that fundamentals are the fundamentals. It's simple. No matter how much you try to gloss over these things, it's basic English. Basic finance. So number one is focus on fundamentals. And I mean, in doing that, you have to validate your market. Like I mentioned earlier, is there a sizable addressable market for this product I'm trying to push? Also, what's your business model? Business model basically means, it's big English, but I'll summarize it. It means that how do I make money? Simple. How do I make money? A trader anywhere in Nigeria or anywhere in the world buys at a certain amount, sells at a certain amount, and makes the magic. How I'm able to make money is that, okay, I make that magic. The question is, how can I keep sourcing at cheaper prices? How can I increase my customer volume so that I can multiply and make more money? It's basic, right? But guess what? Because most of the time we believe that once I've built an app and it's on the Play Store and I'm wearing a black t-shirt, my logo is on front of it, and I'm standing in front of those publications, I'm a tech founder, right? So, and I'm using the new Apple device. I'm using a MacBook. I have dreadlocks. I think that's a new trend now. This guy is wearing it. And I have 1 or 2 earrings on my ears, and I'm wearing very nice sneakers. I'm going to go and speak in a couple of places, and I'm a tech startup founder, right? Maybe, but the point I'm trying to make is that your fancy app on the Play Store is not enough, right? What is your business model, right? Another thing I'll share is, what are your key metrics, right? I mean, like I mentioned earlier, user growth, not vanity metrics, so not, I have 1 million followers on social media. Your million followers on social media on your company's page does not equate conversion. If you're an influencer or a celebrity, maybe it does for you, right? But I'm talking about business now. You start Techtalk-Pay. Techtalk-Pay has 1 million followers on Instagram. Does not mean you have 1 million users. Doesn't mean 1 million users are paying you $5 a month. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Right? Not vanity metrics. Not how many impressions. I have 1 billion impressions. No. How many people are willing to pay for your product? Not even downloads. Because people can download today. You can do a very strong marketing campaign and say, oh, I want to incentivize people with, discounts and all of that. For example, when my Uber came into Nigeria, I think for a while they were doing a lot of promos and discounts and stuff, right? That was good to acquire customers. But guess what? People love free things. They'll use your free ride for you, no problem. When it's time to pay, for example, some people are guilty of this. There's a product, they say free trial. They'll put their card, right? They say 1 week free trial. On the 6th day, they have set another on their phone already, right? And they'll deactivate on the 6th day. And they have used, because he uses a lot of digital marketing products. I'm sure he's guilty of it. I'm sure he's on that team, right? And they remove his card. And the company that is doing the product will think, oh, we have 1 new user. No, you don't have a user because he has not paid. Not to take much of our time. Number 2, after focusing on fundamental economics, is be proactive and strategic in your fundraising approach, which is very, very important, right? Most people just, what I call spray and pray, right? Just send their deck to so many investors or attend all the conferences in Lagos because they're a tech startup founder. No. So most of the time, investors have what they call investment mandate and investment thesis. You hear things like we're sector agnostic, or we focus only on fintech, or we focus only on early stage, or we only focus on seed or growth stage. The reason for it is because the money they are getting from their own limited partners, who are their own investors, the conversation they have with those guys that are going to invest in this kind of startups. So if you have made only $10,000 per month, and they're focused on a growth stage company, they cannot invest in you, not because they are wicked, but that's not their mandate, right? So most of the time, targeting the right investors is very important. Also, craft a very compelling pitch, right? Craft a very, very compelling pitch. I also have what I call an elevator pitch version of that. If you meet a very top investor in an elevator, of course, you can't show him the pitch deck and start presenting in 10 minutes. However, you can talk about high level what your solution is, right? What is the problem? What is the number? And what importantly, why are you the most important person to solve that problem? Or you and your team. For example, if you say I want to found a biotech startup to cure cancer, if I don't have a medical background, my co-founder does not have a medical background, that's going to be very, very difficult to invest in, because why should I trust you that you know cancer enough to solve the problem, right? But because of people have what I call interest, they are interested in cancer research. But interest is different from expertise. I don't think all of us are comfortable with going to a hospital or going to a theater with a doctor that is experimenting and hoping that he gets this right? I tell you, oh, so sorry, I'm still in medical school in 200 level. I have so much passion for surgery. I want to lead this operation. I don't think we're comfortable sitting in that room. So most founders have interests. I think that you love it, that's fine. But we have some sectors, not even some sectors, most sectors need some level of expertise. A lot of investors are beginning to tilt towards founders that have experience, right? One stat that shocks a lot of people is that most unicorn founders, I think, have an average of 35 to 40. In as much as there's so much conversation around younger people, Gen Zs, that's also very important. Most investors are more comfortable investing in people that have been there, done that. So, for example, say I want to do something in, let's say, they help democratize investment into the stock market, and I used to work at a top Wall Street bank for 10 years. My co-founder used to work at Google, right? He understands, payments and fintech, and we come together. It's going to be very easy for an investor to invest in us because we have what we call domain expertise. Sadly enough, most founders don't have domain expertise, right? They have an aha moment, they have an eureka moment. You hear things like, I have a good idea. I don't care about your idea. What's the problem? What is the problem? So most times what they do is they now try to sell their own idea to the market and now force the market to adopt their own idea.
So
like Henry Ford said.
You missed something now, right? Which you already touched deeply on. You have a good idea. It's also
Yes.
important is what experience do you have to drive this idea?
Exactly.
The two go side. It goes side by side.
It goes side by side. What experience do you have? Like Henry Ford said, if you ask people what they wanted, they will have said faster horses. People always make the example of Steve Jobs and all of that. Oh, Steve Jobs said that people didn't want the iPhone. Sometimes you have to innovate. People don't know what they want. I get it. And I agree with that in a sense. But at the same time, too, like I like talking to African founders. This is Africa. Right? So most of the time, we consume a lot of Western media, which is good. You hear things like, oh, Bill Gates dropped out of school, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of school. But guess what? First off, they got into Harvard. Harvard is super hard to get into. 2, they didn't drop out. They got a leave of absence. 3, Mark Zuckerberg raised over $500,000 for a startup, right? I think in his freshman year or second year, right? So, likening it to someone that, let's just suppose you're in 20 level studying engineering, and so you invested $500,000 in your startup. If I'm your parent, of course, I'll tell you to take a leave of absence, right? Because if you finish I don't know what you're going to do at the end. The point I'm trying to make is there was validation, right? There was validation, that was strong enough to say, hey, let me take pause right now and come back. Now they didn't drop out, they just took a leave of absence because they felt it's opportunity at this time. Another thing I didn't also mention is a lot of the times, timing is very, very important in this whole startup journey. And I'll give a very classic example. Zoom. During the pandemic, shares of Zoom spiked, right? In fact, it's another company with similar name also had their shares spike. They're not the original Zoom. But because of that name, people just kept buying Zoom. We all know that Zoom, we're on Zoom right now, but we all know that was a game changer during the pandemic. And now we have WhatsApp that has a feature that allows you share screen. Imagine if WhatsApp launched that feature in 2020 or 2019 before the pandemic. Of course, people will be like, everybody's working from the office. Workers are not collaborating as much online. Remote working wasn't even a thing in Nigeria at that time. Just as far back, 3-4 years ago, it would be unheard of for you to say, I'm not coming to the office, I'm working remotely, right? It seems like the norm now. People will say, I can't take a job that was not offer fully remote. You see a lot of young Nigerian employees saying that, but just 3 years ago or 4 years ago, that was not the case. So think back to what I was saying, right? You have scenarios where you have to understand your own local ecosystem. You have to understand that you don't have safety nets here. And that's why entrepreneurship is not very, very common in this part of the world, because we don't have safety nets, right? We don't have a lot of support systems and support structures, So a lot of founders have to be very, very realistic, very, very realistic.
Demola, let me jump in here.
Okay, sir.
You've actually covered a lot. Some of the questions we would even still like to ask. Your answers already covers quite a number of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to quickly do a recap of what the conversation has been around and what you've been able to do justice to. Okay.
Okay.
Without doubt, yes, the investment in quite a number of startups in the last 10-15 years has really not been a success story all the way, but that still doesn't take away the fact that Africa and Nigeria is still a market to invest in. Okay, and what you've been explaining already speaks to that now.
Yes.
So it becomes a question of what does the market want that quite a number of these startups have not figured out, right? Has it been more of just following the Western trend? Oh, I saw this solution in UK when I went to UK, or I saw this solution online, let me replicate it in Nigeria, or let me replicate it for Africa. But is it what Africa wants? Could that be part of the problem that has been responsible for some of these challenges, right? Your response, what you've explained in the last couple of minutes already speaks to that, right? You are not just responding to emotion, you really need to bring it back home, right?
Yes.
The fundamentals of any development, you can still take away the real sector, right? Quite a number of those startups that got funding, their solutions are really speaking to lifestyle, right? How many startups were raising capital to compete with Dangote of this world, or compete with noodles, which are consumptions which this part of the world needs? You understand? So it might not necessarily be a question of these opportunities not available, because at the same time we're speaking about these challenges, you also still have some of our billionaires multiplying their net worth. You see what I mean, right? But I like some of those important points that you emphasize, right? It's a combination of your experience. Your experience is very important. It is not just about the idea you have alone. 1,001 people have same idea out there. Do you have that experience? And I mean, have you connected that experience with a need that truly exists that you want to fill? Demola, we obviously will still bring you back. Like I said at the beginning, Demola is one of my respected tech actors, okay? People that are very intentional with his achievement, with what he has done. There's something Demola will even do for us, very important, and we already had conversation around it. Again, you know, what I've dedicated myself for from the beginning of the year is more of empowerment in the tech space, to empower people as much as I can in the tech space. When I say empower people in the tech space, I want to get more people into the tech space, right? I want more people that have similar humble background as myself to find space to stand shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Demola that got an high-profile training. You have thousands of millions of Nigerian youths, young kids that didn't have the same opportunity as Demola. These are my interests. The more people we can get in the tech space, the more we can really get, I mean, because you're really talking about numbers. So if you have millions of Nigerian youth, it really doesn't matter what their background is, empowered with technology, some way, somehow, we would have this population producing more of the likes of Inni, more of the likes of Shola, more of the likes of Demola that I also have here. And we can have Nigeria with many more celebrated tech actors, right? So there's something Demola will be doing for us in a couple of weeks. Next month, we'll decide on when the date will be. You have so many Nigerians that want to get education abroad, right? For someone like me, I really wish I have the opportunity of engaging someone like Demola early enough in my career on how to get the best of education without even spending anything, right? How can you, when I say not spending anything, it's really not saying that you don't have to pay for the application, yeah?
Sorry for interjecting. I think let's not let the cat out of the bag, you know. I think it's the marketing guru, right? So I think once substance.
Okay. You know, I still would love people to have an idea of what we are trying to do. But anyways, I want you guys to look forward to what we want to unveil and what we would like to share with people. So many, information is power, right? Sometimes when you don't have the information, you don't know what you're missing, okay? But again, with what we are doing with my friends, Demola, Kester, we just want to give back as much as we can. At the beginning of the year, I said this year, me, AFO, I'm going to facilitate getting 1,000 computers, 1,000 laptops, 1,000 children in Africa, Nigeria to be specific. And people thought I was joking. Already, you guys know that 300 laptops are on their way to Nigeria as we speak. And quite a number of other initiatives that we are part of. The goal is to have more tech actors, no matter what the circumstance is. The fact that some companies failed is a good reason for more people to get into the space and solve the problem those companies could not solve. Demola, in the last couple of minutes, has been doing what to us. What are those things that you have to pay attention to be a successful tech actor, or to be a successful startup company that will move from being a startup company to be as successful of the likes of Paystack, right? Demola, once again, thank you so much for your time. Like I said at the beginning, bringing Demola was because I want people to see that we have many success stories here in Nigeria. As tough as things are, you have Nigerians that are still doing very well in their space and they are making a difference. Demola is another good example of my tech actor, and I'm happy to be associated with you. I want Demola to have the last word on this session, but before Demola makes his final remark, Kester, you also need to give your final thought. Are you convinced that being a startup is a direction to go, particularly in the tech space, with what you've heard from Demola?
Yes, thank you, Afo. Well, I'll start with by saying what most people I think already knows. Being entrepreneurship, being a founder of a company is not for everyone. Not everyone has the patience. Not everyone has the determination to see it through to the end, right? But for the people that would, I think it's definitely worth it. It's definitely something that, I mean, especially in the tech space, right? Just as you've emphasized, there's a whole lot to tap into. There's a whole lot that can be gotten out of it. And if there is anything this session would have done, is I think it should give you more ginger, give you more fire to continue the journey. Right. So thank you, Afo.
Demola, you have the final word.
All right. Thank you so much, Afo, for the amazing opportunity and being on this platform. I really don't take it for granted. It really means a lot to me. For the founders out there, have just a couple of quick things to say, right? First is your dreams are valid, right? I think that just don't count yourself out. You miss 100% of shots that you don't take. So in as much as possible, I'll say bring problem solver. I think so many people are eager to put the tag CEO or founder to their names, right? As opposed to solving problems. Our advice that in this climb, if you can, I mean, there are outliers, but I always say don't assume you're the outlier. If you can, you're just wrapping up school or NYS, if you can have the luxury, have a mentor, get a job if possible that aligns with what problem you want to solve, so you can have some real world experiences. We're not in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, people in the US people start working as early as 15 or 16, right? Their system is very robust and their economy is more matured. Such that they have internships. I think when you're in a US university, they have about 3 or 4 internships every year. And most of these people get to intern in top companies in the world. So at finishing in school, by the time they're graduating, you hear, I'm interned at Goldman Sachs, I'm interned at Google. But in Nigeria, we don't have a very solid structure. In fact, people that are graduated are still looking for jobs. Not to go interns are looking for places to work, right? So I would say that as much as possible, build your experience, build your capacity, build your expertise. Also leverage on resources online. The world is now a university called YouTube, right? You can subscribe to it. It's free. You can learn as much as possible. I'll share 2 final thoughts. One is a principle that guides what I do. It's called Ikigai. And it talks about 4 key things. Number 1 is, what are you good at? Right? You can do an assessment, do an audit with your friends, your family. Everybody's not good at some things, right? Some people can't sing, some people can't, So what are you good at? Number 2, what do you love? What do you actually really passionately care about, right? Number 3, what does the world need? What does the world really need? I didn't say what does the world want. What does the world? And last but not least, what is the world willing to pay for, right? What are you good at? What do you love doing? What does the world need? What is the world willing to pay for? If you find that sweet spot amongst all of these 4 questions, then I think you're onto something amazing. All right, so as I go, I'll say there's a quote that motivates me as well. The future actually belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So as I leave this session today, I want to ask yourself a question. How beautiful is your dream? Thank you.
How beautiful is your dream? That's actually a very good way to end the session. Demola, thank you so much for your time. I also want to just use this as an opportunity to appeal to you. If you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody in US, UK, Canada, and they have a laptop that doesn't mean anything to them again, they should remember there's a guy called Afo that wants to use laptop. A laptop that is hiding in their own cupboard, their basement, or wherever they have it, will empower many youth back home in Nigeria and Africa. This is what I'm committed to, and I need to get support from anywhere, no matter how far the place is. Trust me, I'm willing to come all the way to come and get this laptop. Some people are focused on distributing food. I'm not a food distributor. I'm a laptop distributor. Please support my ministry. The more people you can launch with a laptop, the more tech actors we can have in Nigeria and Africa. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.